Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast giving America hope since 2018. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox Bultan of the New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. From attorneys generals to state senators to mayors to school board members, these are the people that are pushing policies and politics that will respond to climate change, rebuild our economy, address racial injustice, and restore our democracy. These are incredibly talented people who have dedicated themselves to public service when their country and their communities needed it the most. Check out newdealleaders.org to see what I'm talking about. Happy New Year, AHP listeners and watchers. 2025 will no doubt be a doozy of a year. In order to meet the moment, Debbie and I are thrilled to have the remarkable Symone Sanders Townsend as our guest this week. She's the co-host of MSNBC's The Weekend, and she's a former White House official, political strategist, and activist. She came on to share how she plans to hold power to account, keep her sanity and us laughing, occasionally agree with Donald Trump, and her advice to local leaders on the front lines of our democracy. Symone has been a friend and a valued advisor to so many New Deal leaders. We're excited that she opened the door, just a crack, to running for office and being a New Deal leader herself someday. Enjoy.
All right, Symone Sanders, welcome to An Honorable Profession.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Absolutely. I can't think of a better way to kick off 2025 An Honorable Profession than having you join us. It was so great to have you at our conference in November, I should say. You did such a good job interviewing Pete Buttigieg. You almost got a scoop out of him on what he was going to do next. I
was pressing very hard. He's very tight with information.
You did a very good job.
He's got things in the house that need to be done. And Chasten is going to make sure they get done.
You are absolutely right. And it's a special time to have you on the show because you are celebrating the 1-year anniversary of your show on MSNBC, The Weekend. Congratulations. It's so exciting. I guess I just would love to start with kind of you're reflecting back on a year of that show. What's it been like? It was a very eventful year last year, obviously. What's been your kind of experience with that for over the last year?
It flew by. Michael, Alicia, and I honestly can't believe it's been a year since we started The Weekend, but such a consequential year to start. And, we set out to have a show that is not just the aggregate of what happened during the week, but really setting the tone for the conversation that people should be having, looking at the week that was, but also looking ahead to the week that is. And obviously, you don't know how things are going to develop when you throw something together like this. But I think that over the course of a year, Michael, Alicia, and myself have really stood true to that mission. And when you tune in on Saturday and Sunday, whether you tune in at 8 or 8:30, or you're a latecomer and you come at 9, 9:30, or 9:45, you can absolutely bet that we are having you're going to get a conversation no one else is having in the way that we have it. And secondly, we're going to cut right to the issues, to the heart of the stuff. We're going to give you the news, but we're also going to make it fun because we couldn't have gotten through this last year without some levity. And we cannot get through the next year, year and a half, 2 years, 4 years without some levity. So you can count on us to keep it real and also make you laugh while you're at it.
I love that. So it's so important, actually. I think we, particularly looking ahead about the levity we're going to need to have and just to get through all of this. When you look back at the last year, though, are there a couple, maybe one episode that in particular stands out to you as one of your favorite moments, or anything that behind the scenes look at something that didn't go so well, or what do you think about last year?
Oh, absolutely, hands down. My favorite episode is my favorite interview is the one that we did with the president of the Heritage Foundation. And we saw in the news that the president of the Heritage Foundation had been participating in print interviews. He did an interview notably with the Associated Press. And on one of our calls where we're getting together thinking about what we're going to do for the weekend, we said oh, hey, maybe we should ask Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation, if he wants to come on. He's obviously saying a lot of things in the papers, and Project 2025 is hot right now. And after the fact, our EP and our bookers were like, we were kind of skeptical, but we extended the invitation and he came on our show, and we were able to have, I think, a very pointed interview and pointed conversation around Project 2025. I think it's safe to say that Alicia, Michael, and I don't agree with Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation of their direction, what he was talking about. But our goal is to really, again, ask the questions that the viewers at home would want asked, which is, I think we did it, and engage in a dialogue, which I believe we did. And at the end, Kevin Roberts said, I was looking forward to coming here and I'll come back. And so we are going to hold Dr. Roberts to that, and we hope to see him in the new year.
Love that.
How do you think about in a year ahead? I mean, the weekend, you have thoughtful, fun, but substantive conversations. We're about to enter an era of fact-free chaos.
Yeah.
How are you going to try to maintain some thoughtfulness in an era that doesn't seem to value that a whole bunch?
Well, we talked about this the other day amongst ourselves, and one of the things we collectively agreed on is that we just have to stay true to what it is that we do and call a thing. But that means that we can't be Chicken Little. The sky is actually not always falling, right? Mm-hmm. Every nominee that the president-elect has put forward to be a part of his cabinet is actually not a raging MAGA sycophant. Some are, okay, but some are not, Every nominee is not supremely unqualified for their position. I don't agree ideologically with Marco Rubio, but the man is qualified to be Secretary of State, okay? I do not put Marco Rubio in the same bucket as I would put, RFK Jr., okay? I'm just, these two things are not the same. And parsing through it in that way for our audience, to us, is very important, drilling down on the issues. But also when something happens that some people could just call run-of-the-mill and just breeze past it, and if it is not that, it is, from our perspective, our job to make sure that we are elevating the conversation. And we did that this past weekend on January 6th. The Sunday before the January 6th anniversary, that Saturday night, Donald Trump held a party at Mar-a-Lago for John Eastman. And then they had a whole documentary talking about his efforts in the big lie to overturn the results of the election. And they had footage and interviews from John Eastman and all the other key players involved in that effort in the lead up to January 6th within that documentary. The president-elect got up and gave glowing remarks about John Eastman and said that he was right. So we started our show with that on Sunday. It's a lot to talk about, a lot to get to, but hold the hell up here. Okay. We just call a thing. So that's what we're going to do. Now, it's going to get exhausting. So we're going to find our moments of levity in the same weekend that we discussed that. I mean, we also talked about the president, the current president's Medal of Honor honorees, Presidential Medal of Honor honorees. Everybody from Denzel Washington to Fannie Lou Hamer to, yes, Secretary Clinton, even Mitt Romney's dad, right, who was honored posthumously. So was Fannie Lou Hamer. So everything is not, sky is falling. There are going to be bright spots for folks throughout these next 4 years. And frankly, maybe the president-elect is going to do some stuff I actually agree with. He had a post on his Truth Social site a couple weeks ago where he was talking about why did something take so long? And I said, you know what? I'm with Donald Trump. Why did this take so long? And I said, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I agree with the president-elect. So there are going to be times like that. But I know there are a lot of people out there, frankly, that have just lost faith in the news media. And I understand the news is a lot. And there's a lot of people that feel like, oh, you all said that, they said he was a threat to democracy, and now you're covering him like he's not. And I think the reality is because we live in the United States of America, not a dictatorship. We're not in, this is not a country like Russia where we just do what the president says do, right? Regardless of who the president is. The reality of we have rules and norms that govern what we do. We have a president-elect that has tried to blow through a number of those rules and norms, and people have to be vigilant about that. But one of those things says, when you win an election, and when you lose, you lose. And the reality is Donald Trump won this election. So frankly, if anybody normalized Donald Trump, I'd like to have a word with the voters of the Republican Party primary. okay?
Yeah.
Because he's how we got here. So it is not a normalization to cover the president of the United States or the president-elect, but it is a normalization if when things are crazy, you don't call it crazy. And we're going to call it crazy if it is.
I think we got a headline. Symone Sanders says she's with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I don't expect a t-shirt anytime soon. But that was not what I was expecting today. But in that vein of talking about what's going on the ground, we have state and local leaders. We have the Mayor Pete's before they were Secretary Pete's out there on the front lines of democracy, either battling some pretty horrible things or actually doing some really good things for the community. Using your professional experience and your experience now from the weekend, what's your advice for how to get those stories into the mainstream? How do we tell those stories instead of just all the chaos inside the Beltway?
Well, look, first of all, I encourage people to pitch us at the weekend. Okay. I'm happy to, share our contact information. You can, I read Michael, Alicia and I, we read all the DMs, to be very clear. We may not talk about it, but we read them all and we see all the tweets and the posts. But truly, we want to know about what are these amazing things happening out there, maybe some not so good things. We had the candidate, Allison Riggs. She was a judge candidate in North Carolina who is currently, she won her election, but it's currently being challenged by her opponent whom she lost to. We had her on a couple weeks ago. And today, as we had this conversation, we found out that that in North Carolina, her certification of that election is being blocked. Her win is currently being blocked. Yes. So that is something that is happening on local level that doesn't necessarily bubble up to the front page of the New York Times. One could argue it should, but I don't work there. But it's something that affects folks down in North Carolina. You talk about mayors. We had Mayor Bowser on the show this past weekend. And it was so interesting because we clipped a clip from it and her talking about her meeting with Donald Trump. For people that aren't aware, Washington, D.C. has a very special relationship with the federal government. Not only is the nation's capital here in D.C. and all these federal buildings there, the Congress and the president have a lot of say-so in what DC does in many respects. So she has to have a working relationship with whomever the president is, the mayor of DC does. And so we posted the clip of her talking about her meeting with Trump and her saying her meeting was not contentious, which I believe the mayor, that it isn't. People are like, I can't believe she's doing this. And some people in the comments are like, she's a mayor. She got to play the game. And that is the reality for mayors across the country, especially. Look, people don't care when you got a pothole, when your trash don't get picked up. They don't care if it's a Democrat or a Republican. They just know my tire is now messed up because of potholes. And now I got all this trash outside my house because they missed a beat, okay? They don't care if it's a Democrat or a Republican. So these issues, a lot of these issues are not going to come down to whom someone's political party is. A lot of things that happen over the next year are going to come down to who people voted for in the last election. And that's the reality of elections. Elections have consequences. So people have to be, I think, especially local leaders have to be clear with folks about that, but also clear that they're going to do their jobs. I frankly think there's not a better time to be a state legislator because, to be clear, that's where America's policy is made. Not, sorry, Congress, but America's policy is actually made in the state legislatures. The people that are deciding what happens in Oklahoma City is actually the mayor of Oklahoma City and city council. Those are the folks, that's a budget that has to be balanced, right? So I think that where there are ways to work with the administration, I don't think people should go out of their way to bend over and say, look at me, bipartisanship, because that's not necessary, because the people who would do that are not the people who have been sowing the seeds of discord and division in this country. I think the people who have been sowing the seeds of discord and division, those are the folks that need to stand up and say, look, I can work across the aisle. But for the people that have been doing their jobs, have been, straight-laced the entire way, what they need to do is continue to do their jobs, be straight-laced the entire way, and be proactive in telling their stories. I want to see some local municipal leaders going on NPR, on their local NPR affiliate and national. I want to see them going on their local TV stations. Go to your NBC affiliates and whatnot. Make sure you are proactively taking the opportunities to talk about the work that is happening. Because I talk to a lot of people across the country, and the reality is that some people are just unaware of what is going on. They didn't hear it because the Elected officials are not going to the places that they read, watch, and listen to. Okay. So if you are not adept to social media, honey, perhaps you don't need to be going live on your page. Okay, Mayor, so you need to go live somewhere else because you are not the place where the people are going. Okay. So you need to go meet the people where they are.
Yeah, well, amen to that for sure. And I think we're, New Deal is going to feel very good about trying to get our leaders out there as much as we can over the next year and in coming months and years, because what you said, what they're doing on the state and local level matters probably more than ever. They're going to be on the front line. So I really appreciate
and can I say so many leaders, so many elected officials or New Deal leaders that I didn't know about. Like I was at the conference, like, oh my God, you too.
Yeah.
So I do think it is a testament that you all have built a network of committed public servants that are not necessarily of one ideological ilk, right? Because they're across the board. But I think everybody aligns on the values of that public service. We're working on behalf of the people. Public service is a privilege, and also, upholding the values of our democracy. And
That's right.
Seems like that should be standard, but unfortunately, it's not. So, but the network that you all put together is quite impressive.
Well, thank you for that. I so appreciate that. And I think also to add to what you just said, also just making government work. I think we've got a special obligation to make government work well, since we're the party that thinks government can do good things, right? So I think,
government work well. That's a tagline right there. Do y'all have t-shirts?
I'm going to make one for you and me right now.
Yes.
I think some people would be really curious to hear from you about, like, what does a day in your life look like as a talk show host? Like, how do you, how do you guys put the show together? How do you think about, there's going to be so much flying at you, what's going to rise to the bar that you're going to talk about? And what do you, how do you make that happen?
Every day, frankly, is a little different. On a day that's not a show day, a day like today, I may have we call it a hit when we're going on TV. I may have a hit, and I was scheduled for a hit today to respond to and analyze the president-elect's press conference. And so on a day like that, I'll go through I'll read all the news in the morning. My assistant might have put together a research packet for me that I'll read. I'll follow up, Google a bunch of different articles. And then I would sit there and I watched the press conference, which I did. And I took notes, and I posted a video on social, actually, of me doing this. And because the press conference took so long, I actually didn't get on television. But I'm very well aware of what happened in the press conference because I sat through the entire thing. And I have a notebook of notes to speak to that. And while it was happening, we were actually in our host group chat talking about what we want to make sure we highlight from this upcoming weekend. Because the reality is Saturday, it's a long way away from Saturday, but there are people that we cannot assume that the people who turn on the TV at 8 a.m. on Saturday, they saw the press conference today, or that they're aware of the Jimmy Carter processional, or that they saw what Meta announced in terms of they're no longer fact checking and they just gonna go community notes with no oversight. They might be unaware. Okay, they didn't know that the pandas are out in DC now playing in the snow and they're ready to be seen. So we are, because we have 2 hours a day, which is 4 hours on the weekend, we have the ability to kind of stretch our conversations and do a little bit more. So we were in our host chat flagging things. And then tomorrow on a Wednesday, we'll have a phone call where we get on the call with our producers and the hosts. And then our producer kind of puts together a loose rundown of what they are thinking. And we respond to that, or we say, oh, well, what about this guest? What about that with that guest? And then again, on Friday, we'll check in again. We're firmed up. This is who we've got booked. Okay. Not that person. What about this person? Oh, this happened. We really want to add that. And then we check in again Saturday morning at 7 a.m. to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're discussing. And then if there's any last minute changes, like last weekend, we went, because we're supposed to go to bed a little early. Michael Steele, he does not go to sleep early. Michael Steele does not go to sleep. Some days need to do out. But Alicia, she's a good soldier. She's in bed early, okay? Oftentimes when we go to bed on Friday or even on Saturday, things are happening after we've gone to sleep. Our show team, they get up around 2, 3 a.m. I am not getting up that early. So by the time we wake up, if things have changed, we're on email all throughout the early morning. And then that 7 a.m. call is our time where we're really like, okay, what happened while I was asleep? Now, when did this happen? Let me check the research packet. And then by 7:55 at the very latest, we should all be in the chairs and show starts at 8.
Yeah, the news never sleeps.
Never.
News never sleeps.
Sounds exhausting. Sounds
It does
absolutely
sound exhausting and exciting and exhilarating, I hope, right?
All the things.
But all those things are happening between like 2 a.m. and 7. So by the time a lot of people are like getting their bearings on a Saturday morning at 10:30, I'm home, taking off my makeup and get ready to get back in the bed.
Love that.
You've dedicated your life to politics and now you talk about it professionally. For all the people out there who are like, I'm out, like this is, it's too much, it's too hard, all these things, sort of, what's your message that keeps you waking up early in the morning, diving into these issues, trying to get to truth, trying to have good conversations, also trying to have fun? Like for all the people who are just like, never mind, I'm out. What do you say?
Look, first I'll say I understand. Okay, there were right after the election, I was on TV I was on TV that next day and the day after that. But by Thursday evening, I was like, oh, I need a break. And by Friday, I was like, Netflix only. And so I said, I need Netflix until I go back, not until Saturday morning if I turn on TV. So I understand because it is overwhelming. And for the people who are not pleased about the way that the election went, I understand. For the people that are like, oh, actually, the guy I voted for won, but I don't really know about what's going on. Maybe I don't want to watch the train wreck. I understand that too. I would say that politics is happening whether we participate or not. These things are going to happen, whether you decide to turn on your TV or not. Donald Trump is going to be inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States of America. That is in fact what is happening. And so I believe it is better to be an informed citizen. And, you know, my radical revolutionary contribution in life, if you will, is to be able to participate in this political arena and then kind of break it down for people that don't do this every day. And we are, you know, Michael, Alicia, and myself, and so many of our colleagues at MSNBC specifically are there to help folks do just that. You know, we watch the press conference, so if you don't want to, that's fine, honey. We're going to give you the cliff notes. But I think that people, they have to at least get a little bit. We have to be informed. My first producer, Catherine, my first executive producer, she came from local news. And she always told me, she said, you know, what I love about local news is it gives you just enough so you can be conversational around the water cooler. And that is what we aim to do. I want people to have just enough so that they can be conversational around the water cooler. So yes, if the Commanders won or the Cowboys lost, you're going to find out about that probably in the host chat. And you're going to have the high notes about what Donald Trump said and about this thing that's happening over here in North Carolina. So find just one avenue to get back in slowly. I don't suggest people consume it 24 hours a day. I don't even do that. Okay. I like my Real Housewives just like everybody else. Okay. I listen to my non-political podcast. I have a hobbies. I'm working on a new hobby for 2025, but right now one of my hobbies is I do my own nails. I've been doing this since July, and this is my, you know, pastime that my husband says it's actually not cutting down any time. They go into the actual nail shop, but he says I bought all the items, so I need to commit to the hobby, which I have committed. So you got to just find your way to exist to here. But politics is happening whether you participate or not. But the only way to affect how it looks, affect the outcome, is in fact to participate. So I think people have to find their entry points. And if something is happening in your local community that you're kind of like about, whether it's the trash or the potholes or something else, that can be your entry point. That's how I got involved in politics. I got involved locally at first.
Well, I'd love to hear more about that. But before I ask you about that, for people who are not on YouTube and listening to this, Symone's nails do look phenomenal, just for the record.
Thank you. I did not to myself. I'm very proud of this set, okay?
That was very awesome. That is very awesome. So I wanted to go there. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved. People may know that, you know, before you were the TV host, you were a spokesperson and an advocate, particularly around juvenile justice issues. So tell us about how you got involved in politics in the first place. And did you ever see yourself ending up where you are now? I'm so curious. Was this the end goal all along?
When I was like 8 years old, my mom said that I used to like grab a spoon or a pen or whatever was around and pretend to be a news anchor. Funny
Amazing.
enough. And my news name was Donna Burns. So I was Donna Burns reporting live. I don't know where Donna Burns worked. I don't know where she went to journalism school, but she was a reporter, honey. Now I like to say I don't have to play Donna Burns. I get to be Symone Sanders Townsend. But I'm from North Omaha, Nebraska. So shout out to the Midwest. Okay. I'm a strong advocate for people getting engaged who are not from the coast. Okay. No shade to the East Coast and the West Coast, but the Midwest, like the South, does have something to say. So I was an intern, actually. I got an intern with my mayor's office. It was then Omaha Mayor Jim Suttle. I'll never forget. He just celebrated a big birthday, by the way. And the day that my internship started, I was a communications intern. There was an effort to recall the mayor that started up. Exactly. And for folks out there that don't know about the recall effort, in Nebraska, you have to have 2 elections. One, if the municipality wants the recall to happen, so they vote yes or no. And if they vote yes for the recall, then you have another election on if they actually want to recall the elected official. So after my internship, I actually went to volunteer on the mayor's effort to beat the recall. And he won. Okay, but he lost re-election 2 years later, because if they're trying to recall you in the middle, the writing is on the wall. And as a part of that effort, I met these guys that owned a political consulting firm out of Tennessee, but Mayor Suttle's team had hired them to organize North and South Omaha, which were the predominantly African-American and Latino parts of the city. So after, I made myself available. So if they needed coffee, I got them coffee. My mom had been very involved in the community. She was the wedding coordinator for the, big local church, and she was everybody's seamstress. So she would take me at all the meetings and places. So I got to know a lot of people growing up, my sister and I. So I knew, I knew people, I could get them space, we get them connected. I pulled all my friends from college to be volunteers. So afterwards, they let me continue to work with them. And that's actually where I got a lot of my political experience. I didn't know, in some places, judges are elected. Well, in Nebraska, judges are appointed, but it wasn't until I worked with this firm that I found out that judges were elected. So I worked on some judges races in Tennessee specifically, and in North Carolina. I did stuff on reservations, right? They brought me along with them when they would do candidate consultations. I did state legislative races across the country. They would not pay me what they should have. Yeah, retrospect, okay. But I appreciate Robert and Chris for exposing me, because that's where I got the bulk of my political experience. When I moved to DC, I worked for a consumer advocacy think tank in the global trade division. If anybody knows Public Citizen, I used to work for Global Trade Watch. Now Global Trade Watch is no more. Lori Wallach started her own thing, my old boss. But that is where I knew nothing about trade. But Maxine Waters told me she would not hire me because I didn't have any technical writing experience. So I thought there's nothing more technical than global trade. So I went and I did that. And that's where I got introduced to this coalition building, federal government, DC, like campaign world. That's where I learned about Bernie Sanders and all these other things. But I fundamentally believe that local politics is, I wanted to be a city council person. Before I moved to DC, I was struggling because I was like, I was going to run for city council. I've been shadowing my city councilman regularly. Yes, his name was Ben Gray at the time, District 2, North Omaha. And Ben Gray was going to retire. And I was seriously considering running for Ben Gray's seat. And I'll just never forget, I was on a flight to DC because I was working for, in my, pastime that I apparently had. I was a juvenile justice advocate, as you mentioned, and I sat on the board for the Coalition for Juvenile Justice. I was the national, at the time, it was the national youth chair, but we changed it to Young and Emerging Leaders because youth is the size on a t-shirt. And I'm going to go to my grave railing against the term youth when it comes to this.
Love that.
But I'll never forget, I was on this plane and I was sitting next to this, he was just young, suave, GQ looking white boy. He just looked great. And I was like, what do you do? Because what in the world? And he told me he was a consultant and he flew all around and he was just telling me about his like escapades. And I'm just like, this sounds amazing. And I thought, I don't think city councils are going away tomorrow, but my opportunity to like broaden my aperture will not always be there. And so if I'll try this thing, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back home because I love my community and my community loves me. And I have not had the pleasure of going back home because life has continued to work out. So
I got to ask, is holding elected office in Omaha an aspiration for you?
Is this an announcement day?
Yeah, exactly.
Every couple years, because I'm still very connected to all the political people there in Omaha and in Nebraska. And every couple of years, somebody calls my mother and they say, does she want to run for governor? Does she want to run for Senate? I'm like, no, she doesn't. She enjoys the jobs that she does now. I a long time ago, resigned myself to being the people behind that helps get the people elected. And now I am the people that talks about all of the electing. I don't think it's in my cards to be an elected official, but you know what? Never say never. But right now, I really enjoy what I am doing. I just think when I decided to leave, when I decided to leave politics, when I left the White House, I knew I wanted my next job to be two things. I was being honest and saying I didn't want to work as hard as I had been working the last 3 years. I was like, I don't want to work like this, from the campaign to the White House. I was getting married, and I was like, I want to plan my wedding with my husband. I want to go to brunch. I hadn't been to brunch in so long. I want to go to happy hour. And the second thing I wanted to do is I still wanted to be impactful. And I don't care what they say in the papers. Television is still a very impactful medium, because when something happens in the world, you do not go to your favorite podcast first. You turn on the television to see what is happening. And I've counted as an immense privilege and an honor, frankly, to be able to sit in the seat and be in this space and have a voice that, sometimes people think means something. So I'm enjoying what I do right now. And I am just so I envy and am so proud of the people that have stepped up and put their name on the ballot. Like when I was at New Deal and I saw folks like Malcolm Kenyatta, who's former state rep, now elected again, honey. When I saw the former mayor of Parkland, who now
Christine Henschofsky,
legislator, that's in Florida. Like these are people who have dedicated their lives to doing a little bit more. And those are the people, frankly, that give me, energy. Those folks. And then when I saw the vice president certify the election, I was just like, well, dang it. If Kamala Harris could stand up there with all that grace and grit, okay, and no snark, and do her job in front of not just America, but the world, the rest of us actually have no excuses. So no excuses for us to not press forward and do what we can do in our own space and place.
It's very well said.
That when you run and win, you're a New Deal leader automatically.
That's right.
I feel like I'm grandfathered in, okay?
Yeah. You are a godmother.
Thank you. I'll be looking for my badge and my T-shirt.
You got it. Well, we can't thank you enough, Symone, for coming on, and particularly this week with your anniversary. Huge congratulations again. And I know it's going to be a really long few months and years here, but I'm taking a lot of heart and inspiration from what you just said about my own work and on New Deal's work, that we just got to keep trucking on. We can get up and do this every day, and we can have some fun in the process. And that's really good words to live by.
Yes, we can. We look, to borrow from former President Obama. Yes, we can. We can get up and do this every day. And to be very clear, we must, because if we don't, the vacuum is going to be filled by people that do not care nearly as much as we do. They do not have even an ounce of integrity as we all have. And I would prefer that the vacuum is filled by people who care, who are consistent, who are thoughtful, who are problem solvers, not just people that point out the problem, and that want to create a society for every person, not just a few individuals.
I love that. Thank you. Amen.
We needed that.
We needed that. Exactly. Well, congratulations again. Thank you for taking the time out to be with us today. And we look forward to working with you all year.
Thank you, guys. See you very soon.
See you soon. Thank you.
An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. Thanks to the team at New Deal for producing this episode. We encourage you to bring honor to public service, and because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars are used in the making of this podcast.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.